We've been inundated with more than 10,000 inquiries from South Africans inquiring about the process of which they could follow to become refugees and which they can relocate with their families to the United States. Annually, we support approximately 11,000 temporary agricultural workers that travel to the US between March and October of each year to work on US farms. The way has now been paved for those individuals that are known as H-2A visa workers to make use of this opportunity and move to the US permanently. They already have.
Guys, I'm just really hoping, really, that we're not actually descending into what Zimbabwe was after the whole Mugabe era. Today, I just woke up this morning to news that says that over 10,000 white farmers already looking to exit South Africa. I think there's this guy in this video. He's actually, his name is Neil Diamond, right? And he's actually the president of the South African Chamber of Commerce in the USA. And he's actually explaining that, you know, ever since Donald Trump gave this offer for the Afrikaners, or probably those who actually have been tagged as being oppressed in South Africa by race laws and all of that, to come over to claim refugee status in the USA, there's been a lot of rambling around that, you know, with AfriForum coming back to say that, you know, South Africa is their land and no, they're not leaving. That's actually making a rounds now, going viral. And a lot of whites in South Africa are really confused. I saw one really honest comment. I think that comment came from their heart on this channel, asking me, you know, please, sir, what do you think? Should we take this offer? That comment really touched me so much, and I really could feel the honesty and the kind of like trepidation in that question, that on how South Africans, white South Africans especially, are feeling regarding this whole drama going on right now. And then, you know, also, if you listen to the SONA debates now with all the parties, I could hear from many of the parties, I think from the ANC, there's a rhetoric anyway, the EFF, the left-wing parties, you know, kind of like putting a lot of blame on disinformation from, I think, AfriForum and Solidarity and, you know, the white in South Africa, and now reneging on something that they had actually had set in motion. And so I thought probably this was actually going to be the argument that white South Africans would decide, no, this is our land. We are staying. We're not going anywhere. Donald Trump can actually keep the US to himself and all that. Only to come this morning to see that it actually says that there were as much as 10,000 white farmers, and that's specific, 10,000 white farmers. So this adds to the 1,700 billionaires I told you guys left South Africa in 2023. This adds to the almost 33,000 South African taxpayers who had actually changed their tax residency from South Africa to another country. This adds to, I think about, I made a video of almost about, was it 2,400 doctors who actually had been fired and now left jobless and open to maybe change their locations because there are no jobs in South Africa for doctors. All right, and being a doctor, we're growing up when we had three options for a profession. What would be your dream career? It was usually a doctor, an engineer, and I think what was the third one, a lawyer. So people like me ended up being doing graphic arts, and then coming now into history and historical research in my PhD. But this news here by, you know, this South African chamber, South African, you know, he's actually the head of the Chamber of Commerce in the US, right? South African Chamber of Commerce in the USA, Neil Diamond, actually says that there were as much as 10,000 inquiries on how to begin the process of this whole refugee claim in the US. And this is not actually the top of the point. He actually said that every year, right, that there's usually this agreement between the US and South Africa, that there are usually some farmers in South Africa who actually go to the US for some period of the year to give their farming skills. These are essential skills that the US actually see that are residing in South Africa. These are skills, all right? And we're moving into the era of skills. If you don't know, the next era we're getting into, Elon Musk has actually just moved to try to buy Sam Altman's OpenAI, all right? So we're getting into the era of skills. And if you do not have a skill in the new world we're getting into, bro, it's going to be a disaster. And that's why I'm afraid for Africa, my own continent, because you see, we've been really untrained and unskilled in the new skills that are coming. The goal of the next century or the next era will be how to unlearn as fast as possible. So most of the skills that have actually come from us from the Enlightenment era to, with the influence of colonialism and that world is slowly being wiped off by new skills. And if we're not able to really embrace these skills that are really coming up, we are looking at a disaster brewing. With as much as, if you listen to Moletti Mbeki, 50.6% of South African households on SASSA. That's almost like a disaster. How would the ANC begin to generate the funds? I listened to Ramahopa yesterday in the SONA debate, and he spoke about the investment and all that. That's really good, really interesting investments coming into South Africa and all of that. But then there's a mass of unemployed, uneducated and unskilled people. And this would be the majority of, especially the youth in South Africa, who would be needed to really prop up the economy, you see, and all that. But if those skills are not missing, if those skills are missing, are not there, and there's no capacity to even train them on the short, medium, or long term, we're looking at a disaster brewing. And now the one skill that has actually kept South Africa at the top of the top, even though amidst a lot of conflagration in terms of its, the historical precedence that has led to the ownership of farms by the white farmers, all right? That skill now seems to be under threat. And as much as 10,000 farmers are beginning to look at a possibility to leave South Africa to go and help the agricultural industry in the US and help the US even get more prosperous. I was actually listening to, who was that? Rob Hersov yesterday. He had an interview with Sizwe Mpofu-Welch. I'll be making a series of videos on that as well. And he spoke about how, I think in Texas, or one of the states in the US anyway, the two richest people in those states in the US are South Africans. And so that's why many times when I see South Africa, I see a wealth of greatness, all right? A wealth of possibility. But I don't know how it is that many of the South Africans are not able to see this. I don't know, really. I'm struggling to really understand what has gone wrong. So we are seeing a possibility of losing 10,000, as much as 10,000 or even more, South African farmers to the US. He actually argues in this video that the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in the US actually supports as much as 11,000 temporary South African agricultural workers under what he calls the USH-2A visa to come to do temporary farming work in the US. But now this refugee status might actually open the door for a green card, so to speak. And so we might see an exodus of these farmers, right? And this is an exodus of skills. I don't know. I just, in my mind anyway, I know probably this could actually be a goal because of the whole land expropriation without compensation. And it could actually be a goal for the left, because now land, and I hope that this land will be appropriated professionally or in a way that benefits those who are claiming they want land expropriation. Because at the end of the day, I really hope that the ANC would be, have that much integrity to give the land to the rightful people who claim that they are the owners of those lands. But if that doesn't happen, if the ANC goes in a really awkward way in terms of managing this whole problem with the land expropriation, and then we have the skills that actually should be propping the nation, right? Living, the skills of farming, because these skills, I think, could actually be transferred. There could be a conflagration between black and white farmers. I always believe in the cooperation of races. This is my own stand on things in life. And, as a Judeo-Christian, for me, I'm Christian. I don't know if you guys know, but me, I'm really Christian. And I have this philosophy of, the spread of the children of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, when they spread out, into the world, all right? It was the plan, original plan, for them to work together. And the more they worked together, the more they prospered. The more they worked individually, the more their weaknesses got on. So we saw that across history. You know, I'm a historian. When the Europeans slowly started to work to kind of like isolate themselves and exhume themselves, we saw the glorification of self. The likes of Marcus Aurelius, the likes of, these European leaders from Greece and Rome and all of that. For the blacks, what would have been called the descendants of Ham, the descendants of Europe were actually liking to be from the descendants.
No one likely to take up this deal, Neil. I mean, many AfriForum came out and said the cost would be too high for the Afrikaner community to take up this deal. And there's a sense that given access to opportunity and given statistically what we know about the economic and financial positioning and conditionalities of white Afrikaner families, they have it relatively well in South Africa compared to what they would have it as in the USA. Would anyone reasonably take up this deal and settle in the US as a refugee?
Well, just to give you an indication, in the last 18 hours since this news has broken of the executive order that was signed, we've been inundated with more than 10,000 inquiries from South Africans inquiring about the process of which they could follow to become refugees and which they can relocate with their families to the United States. Annually, we support approximately 11,000 temporary agricultural workers that travel to the US between March and October of each year to work on US farms. The way has now been paved for those individuals that are known as H-2A visa workers to make use of this opportunity and move to the US permanently. They already have employment in the United States and they can comfortably resettle with their families. And I think therefore our concern is focused in and around the agricultural sector. There are other sectors such as finance, manufacturing and various skills that will also be affected, but this is something that directly affects the food security of South Africa. It also impacts on the binational trade, as many of those trade sectors are for agro-processed goods that are currently being traded with the United States. So the concerns here are real, and the interest that we have seen alarms us as business. The impact on South Africa has got a dire end outlook at this stage.
Yeah. What do you envision a solution to this to be, concretely?
Look, SACUSA urges governments to engage in urgent diplomatic discussions to address the underlying causes of this executive order and explore solutions that do not compromise the economic stability.
Just for clarity, Neil. Just for clarity, just describe to us what the underlying conditions are for this executive order.
Well, we are referencing the underlying causes. We don't know what has informed the President of the United States to take this executive order. We have previously indicated that we would like to ensure that facts and not fiction guide the President of the United States' actions. But I think we have already been overrun by events. At this stage, the executive order is in place. And the President of the United States have specifically referenced that the Expropriation Act follows countless government policies in South Africa designed to dismantle equal opportunity in employment, education and business. So if we read it in that base, and we are still having our legal team look at this, it basically opens it to any minority in South Africa that feels disenfranchised over the last 30 years. We believe in a government of national unity that has been established last year. We believe in every South African playing their part to make our country economically viable and successful as a global player, but also looking at the impact that that would have if we lose any specific segment of our society. We don't want to reference specifically Afrikaners. I think it is broader than just that singular group. But the reality is the term second-class citizen is being thrown around these days and popularized, and I am hearing it more and more. We did not liberate our country so that there should be second-class citizens. And I think having the leader of the free world addressing this issue is a significant concern for business.
Well, I mean, there are over 75% of landowners in South Africa that are white, and I think they might have a thing to say about whether or not they think they are better placed in South Africa. Neil, thank you so much for that.